Hello and welcome to another episode of the To Baldly Go podcast, and thank you for joining me on my mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to baldly go where so many have gone before. My name is Aaron, and I am watching Star Trek for the first time from the beginning, then discussing with some of my Trekkie friends. This week, I'm joined by my old friend Nate, and we will be discussing Who Watches the Watchers, The Bonding, and Booby Trap. Now, make it so. So, should we talk about these episodes?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we're starting out this week. I didn't have any homework to rewatch any prior episodes to revise my ratings this time around. So we're watching episodes 4, 5, and 6 of season 3 of Next Generation, starting with mistakenly believing Captain Picard to be a god. The members of a primitive culture seize Troy and prepare to sacrifice her to him in Who Watches the Watchers.
I feel like there's an entire portion of the fan base that does think Picard is a god, though.
Yeah.
That was a really dumb joke, but it was too easy to not make, or too easy to make. So we're rolling with it.
I mean that's true though. I mean you hear some people who they love
Think
him
think he
no
does.
matter what.
Yeah.
Greg.
He's not here to defend himself.
It's that's his fault. Uh so this was an interesting episode, I thought. It's obviously, again, a theme we've seen throughout a number of different episodes. Seems very cynical or critical of religion in the way it's presented, because it's presenting religious belief very as as very naive and misguided. But I don't know if it's entirely wrong in a lot of cases.
Yep. Okay.
Um, so it makes it interesting. I think it's an interesting discussion on like, do we have a predisposition to believe in something or anything?
Yep.
And I think it seems there is something where we are looking for something greater than ourselves. Um, but then at the same time, how easily we can be taken in by something that's beyond our comprehension. And I find it interesting to think about how often we may provide an explanation for something that we do not understand. And we can be completely wrong in that explanation.
Yep.
And there's a lesson there in that, I think. Um, and then finally thinking like, how often do we, as a society, as how often do religious people attribute things to God that are otherwise perfectly explainable? And that's, as a guy who grew up in the church and grew up in a church that was not entirely don't ask questions, but had a little bit of don't ask questions,
Yep.
kind of leaves you thinking like, okay, like how many things do have explanations just because we don't know them?
Yep.
And you see that when he said when Liko, I almost said Loki, when Liko says to Picard something to the effect of like, "There's no other explanation," and Picard is just like, yeah, there is. I can give it to you because nothing you're saying is right." Just it's an interesting thing to consider. That's always a little uncomfortable to consider about the
Sure.
things that we don't know. Um, and I I I thought this episode was very much this was a little bit of Star Trek jujitsu.
Okay.
And the Mintakans are white belts. I mean, they're a functioning society.
Uh-huh.
They're learning, they're doing things, they're functioning. The people on the Enterprise, Picard, they're blue belts, maybe purple belts.
Okay.
I mean, they can do things to the Mintakans that seem effortless, they seem powerful, they seem magical at the things they can do at will. But then we've got the black belts in Q and the Traveler from where no one has gone before. And these are effectively the same they're the same to Picard and the Enterprise that the Enterprise crew is, and Picard are, I'm sorry, the Picard are
The
to the Mintakans. It's it's funny to see it that way, I think. Or that's kind of where my mind went watching it. Um yeah, it was a little bit like jujitsu because when you're a white belt, you can see a blue belt, or a blue belt can do stuff to you at will. A purple belt, even more so, can just throw you around like a rag doll. But then you see them against a black belt, and the black belt is effortlessly doing the exact same things to them. And
Yep.
so that's why I said, okay, yeah, the Enterprise, they're blue belts, maybe purple belts, but I mean, there are clearly far more powerful entities out there that can just at the snap of a finger send them to other galaxies and all of that. So those are a couple of the thoughts I had going into this one. I'm interested what your thoughts were and what your rating is on this
Well,
episode.
what's your rating? Because you said
I'm
I meant.
based on what I said, what do you think my rating is?
I would guess it's. I'm gonna say it's a 7.
Okay. I did give this one an 8. I thought this
Okay.
episode was great. I
Okay.
thought it was strong all around. I thought there was good use of the characters, the story, philosophy, and culture. Like it had everything in there. Um, it was a weird one though. I started watching it and I was distracted. I don't know if I had my phone out or if I was just looking at something else. And I was like 8 minutes into it, and I was like, God, nothing is happening. This episode is stupid. I was like, okay, I gotta just start it over. So I just completely started it over, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, I missed everything that was going on here.
Yeah.
And uh yeah, I kept it. I don't know how long it took me to watch the episode because I kept pausing it to take down notes and just write down my thoughts as I was watching. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I did not take a lot of notes on this.
Hmm.
And it really varies for me whether I take a lot of notes or I take some notes or I take very few notes or in cases of shades of gray, like no notes.
Right.
And I often try and figure out if that is a reflection of the quality of the episode, positive or negative. Is it so
Hmm.
good that I'm riveted that I'm not taking notes? Is it so good that I have lots to write down? Or is it so bad that I have nothing to say, or so bad that I have lots to like? And
Right.
I haven't figured it out yet because um, I too enjoyed this episode. I think it's interesting, you talk about growing up in the church and not really being able to, ask a lot of questions. I too grew up in the church. I'm a preacher's kid, although I didn't become a preacher's kid until I was an adult. But
Hmm.
was still kind of a thing, right? And um, I did grow up in an environment where you could kind of question things a little bit and dig
Hmm.
into it, and so I mean, there was a good chunk of I would say my late middle school to high school years where I spent a lot of time in conversations with just various people of varying beliefs around religion or Christianity or atheism or agnosticism or you name it around reconciling science with religion.
Hmm.
And for me, it was always this thing of I believe the two can coexist.
Hmm.
I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think, you know, they can be used to explain each other to
Hmm.
a certain extent. And so, to me, it was kind of interesting to watch this episode because that's a little bit of what they're doing here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're set up as a very science-oriented race that has let the religious teachings of the past kind of go by the wayside, and now suddenly there are things that come back that bring that back to the forefront, and there's a little bit of like them trying to reconcile that there,
Hmm.
right? Which is interesting. But the thing that stood out to me is a quote that I had not thought about in a long time. Um, and it's from Arthur C. Clarke. And it was the quote is it's actually I had to look this up real quick before just to make sure I was attributing it to the right person, but it's a part of his Clarke's three laws, and this is his third one, which is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Hmm.
And I think that is really the theme of this episode.
Yeah.
They are so advanced. Their technology is so far beyond what the Mintakans know or understand or can even like dream of that it
Hmm.
feels like magic and manifests itself as religion. And I don't think that that should necessarily be an indictment of religion. It's just that they're trying to reconcile what they are seeing
Hmm.
with what they know
With
and
what and
map
with what
those two
they
together.
and with what they can comprehend,
Exactly.
I think. Yeah, I at one point I wrote down this episode is kind of the Tucker and Dale versus evil of religion and not slasher movies.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
I've not. I've heard of
Oh,
it. I've never seen
it's
it.
it's it's a like Friday the 13th style movie from
Okay.
the perspective of the bad guys.
Oh,
Of
interesting.
the of the bad guys. So they're just these two hillbillies trying to fix up a cabin and stuff happens.
Yep.
These kids are camping and one of them falls in the water and they pull her out of the water into their boat and they're just like, "Hey, we've got your friend," trying to tell them like, "Hey, we've got your friend over here." But then they
Yeah.
show it from the kid's perspective, "We've got your friend," and all threatening. So it's just like these there are these misunderstandings on the part of the Mintakans of what's
Yeah.
happening, and Picard can't easily explain to them why they're wrong, but when you know that they're wrong, the explanations are clear.
Right.
So we can see, yes, it's just the ship. All of this has an explanation, but to their perspective, it doesn't. And yeah, I found it just a fascinating episode in that regard. Um, I didn't think from the thumbnail or from the image that pops up on Paramount Plus when you select this episode. I didn't go into it thinking I was gonna think this was some deep episode.
Right.
I try not to judge it, but at the same time, sometimes you can't help when you see certain things. It's like, okay, this is gonna be whatever, and yeah, I thought it was very interesting that way, and
Hmm.
then seeing the struggle then from Picard too, trying to explain it and thinking like, okay, I've made
She,
sense to this person, and then she totally doesn't get it.
yeah.
And his line of, I've failed to get through to you, haven't I? Despite all my efforts. Um, it
Oh, it's so
seeing
great.
that
So
struggle
well
was
done.
just awesome. I thought this episode was so good. Um, which was pleasantly surprising because especially after starting it, getting a few minutes in, not paying attention to it and thinking
Yeah.
like, man, this
You
episode
know,
kind of sucks. And like, no, there's got to be something going on here. And then just being riveted the entire time. Um, but yeah, I thought it was another example of a message from a book I constantly bring up, the beginning of Infinity. Uh, Basically, a major theme in that book is if something is not limited by the laws of physics, it's nothing more than a question of knowledge.
Yep.
And that's everything. If it's
Yep.
not limited by physics, It's a knowledge issue. And that's it.
And the big question is what things are limited by physics or simply our knowledge of physics.
Right. Right.
So
And
that's a whole
yeah,
different conversation.
yeah. And I did like how he did finally get through to Nuria talking about the bow and arrow versus anything else and living in huts versus caves and caves versus under the stars. And and when he said to you it's a simple tool, to her it's magic. And
Mm.
explaining to these, we'll call them one stripe white belts,
Yeah.
how advanced they are compared to just a plain old no stripe white belt. And the stuff that they can do seems like magic, and that it's all just those matters of degree. Um, I thought was just really a cool episode.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I just love them always calling him the Picard.
So I ended up giving it a seven. I like it. I think it's a really good episode. I don't
Yeah,
know that I could give it an eight. Although I respect the eight, I can totally understand where you're coming from there. But I also didn't have a whole lot to complain about. I think it's
yeah.
another very interesting um exploration of the Prime Directive.
I have a
And
lot of stuff on that.
yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about there. And it's a very we see more of like the hardcore Picard in this episode too,
Hmm.
where they bring the guy back to the planet. I can't remember his name. Um it's gonna bug me if I don't look it up. But he's injured. He gets shocked and falls out of the duck blind. Is it
Yep.
Liko? Is that
Liko.
Liko? Okay.
Yep.
So they bring him back, and Picard's like, "Why did you do this to Crusher?" Well, he was gonna die. Then why didn't you let him die?
Right.
Just a very matter of fact, like, you fucked this up. What in the
Hmm.
hell are you thinking that you brought him back here?
Well,
Um,
and then later on when they're just like, well, I guess that memory wipe didn't work.
yeah.
Kind of just like,
So I wrote down some notes on that because again, sarcastic Nate kind of took over because they actually bring up Pulaski
hmm,
and the memory wipe they do in Pen Pals.
hmm,
And Crusher's saying, well, we'll just do that again. Which to the fact that they even brought up Pulaski is kind of interesting, right? Because she just
hmm.
really wasn't in the show anymore.
Right.
Um, and then later he wakes up and remembers everything. And so my note there was clearly that didn't work. So that means Crusher is the shittier doctor.
That's,
I
I
know that's a
mean,
hot take. People
that's a
love
hot take,
Crusher.
but you're not wrong.
Yeah. I
I,
mean,
I wrote down when they talked about a wiping short-term memory. I wrote down, K, did you flashy thing me?
yeah.
K from Men in Black.
Come the man
Um,
in black.
Yeah. So I thought that I mean they probably could have used that and it would have been
Yep.
more effective.
Yeah, probably.
Now, I I feel like this episode makes the Prime Directive really unclear
Okay.
because they're watching this society, okay? But the Prime Directive is and maybe I'm confused on what the Prime Directive is. I think it's non-intervention, right? Basically,
Not, they usually say non-interference, but I think
non-interference. Okay.
you can kind of there's
But
only a small nuance there,
how does
right?
that reconcile then with trying to seek out new life and new civilizations? I mean,
Yep.
are they looking just I mean, clearly they're not just anthropology, like anthropologists just looking at stuff
Yep.
because they have all of these relationships and treaties and whatever with all of these other beings.
Hmm.
Well, that can only come through contact and interference with them. And like then by the end of it, I think Picard goes against everything he's saying because he's saying that uh oh, I don't know. I didn't write down all of it, but Nuria at one point says, "Perhaps one day my people will travel above the skies." And like in, I think an original series episode, they had to go back in time to get a phaser that they left or something like that. Because if they even let those people know that technology existed, it would alter the course of events and development and all that. Granted, that was going back in time and not just an earlier stage in civilization's development. But if they've told this society, like, not only are there great advancements you can achieve,
Hmm.
but you can even travel above the sky. You can
Yep.
go to the stars. They've now planted a seed that's going to change the trajectory of that society forever.
Right.
Because why are they going to worry about getting from point A to point B on Mintaka when they can look and strive further? That maybe they would have gotten there someday, but definitely would not have gotten there, say, tomorrow. At least in their knowledge of what's possible. And again, it's all a knowledge issue, not a physics issue.
Yep.
So then
So,
that would seem to go against the Prime Directive, period. But at the same time, is that bad? I mean, is it wrong? Or once that veil has been torn, fuck it.
yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, in this particular situation, it's kind of the latter, because by the time he's having that conversation with her about those things, the damage is done.
Right.
Frankly, the damage was done the second that duck blind opened up and they could see what it was, and Liko was healed and returned, and like all of that was, the Prime Directive, I think, goes out the window a little bit at that point.
But
Um,
then what I thought, and I agree, but then Picard was fighting it so hard after that was already done. It's like,
yeah,
okay, this door has been not just open, but ripped off the hinges.
yep,
We need to deal with this now. We need to deal with reality as it is, not the rules as they should be.
right.
Because as they should be, that to pull a reference from a later episode, that ship in a bottle has sailed.
For
I
sure.
mean,
So I don't know if he's thinking of it from the perspective of trying to contain what damage he can. Like, yes, the veil has been torn. Yes, the damage is done to a certain extent, but you can make the damage worse. I also think of it from the perspective of, I don't think they ever establish how many Mintakans there are, but this is obviously one small village
yeah.
amongst others that
Yeah, they didn't really go into that. It was just this small
that
tribe, basically.
maybe that impact is minimal at that point,
Yeah.
because what alien abductions, right? We don't take anyone seriously that says they've been abducted by aliens. Whether
Hmm.
that's true or not, we think by and large as a society that that's bunk, right?
Right.
So maybe it falls into that category.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think, is that maybe a plot hole in this episode? Potentially. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea is non-interference with pre-warp civilizations. That's the high level
Okay. So
conversation
that
of,
that then explains why it's okay with, say,
yeah,
other civilizations because they're past a certain threshold of development.
yeah, it
That
was
makes sense.
determined, and there are episodes I think dive deeper into this later, but there, for whatever reason, they've determined that warp capability is a major turning point in the development of a society where it's okay to start making contact. And to some extent, I think that makes sense, because if you don't make contact with them, they're going to make contact with you. They now have the means
Hmm.
to that, right?
Right.
They could show up at Earth's doorstep and be like, "Hi," um, because now they
Right.
have the capability to. So,
I thought this episode was a prime example of the cover up being worse than the crime.
mhm,
And to be fair, pulling us out of how things should have been, it made it a compelling story.
right,
It filled the
for
time that
sure.
they had to tell the story. It made it compelling because now all of a sudden there are more issues we're running into because of the decisions they've made. And
Yep,
and that's probably a big part of why decisions were made the way they were because it made for a better story than saying like, okay, yep, sorry, we're here, here's what's going on. Let's just explain it to you. We're not gods. This is just we're advanced. You've got a lot to learn. We can teach you some stuff and now we're going to go on our way. Uh, that's not a good story. That's not a compelling episode. So
yep.
uh, we wouldn't want that. But it was. I did write down at one point the cover up is worse than the crime because it felt like everything they did to fix breaking the Prime Directive made things worse,
Well,
or
and
at least increase the complications.
there was another. I'm just remembering this now because my first thought was, as you were saying that, was why didn't they just at that point they had already beamed up Liko? Why didn't they just fix him and send him back
Hmm.
and let him be the crazy dude and probably not change anything? But I forgot at that point there was still a missing person
Hmm.
from the duck blind
Yep.
that they then found in the caves. And so
Yep.
now there was a rescue attempt for that person. That's probably a bigger thing that you want to resolve.
Yep.
You don't leave that behind because
Well, and they didn't, and they did address why they didn't want to just why they needed to. I think it was the guy's name was Baron, Dr. Baron. Um, Picard is saying that he cannot like impose something on them and basically tell them, "Yes, I am God. Do as I say."
right.
And Baron says, like it or not, we have rekindled the Mintakan's belief in the Overseer.
Hmm.
Riker, and are you saying that this belief will eventually become a religion? And Baron says it's inevitable. And without guidance, that religion could degenerate into inquisitions, holy wars, chaos. And so, I mean, they do kind of address why it's just like we can't just say like, oh shit, let's move on. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of an original series move of like, oh, by the way, here's all this new knowledge for you, and now you're gonna die, but later.
Yep. See, bye.
I mean, um, yeah, uh,
So I
yeah,
mean, I think, but we had to know that it was going to get worse
oh yeah,
simply because Picard said the line, "Further contamination must be prevented."
right.
And we were 25% of the way through the
And
episode.
that
Like,
means
well,
further contamination is
we'll
virtually guaranteed.
yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was well
I
done. I thought it
agree.
was, yeah, I really liked it. Um, a few random things, as it seems is so often the case in these episodes, especially as we get closer and closer to like times when we would be watching stuff. I mean, this episode came out when I was 4. But
See?
seeing now in multiple episodes, seeing actors and actresses where it's just like, oh God, where do I recognize that person? Especially when they're all in makeup and everything and
Yep.
looking like Star Trek aliens. Liko looked so familiar, and I had to look it up. And there are two things where I see him. We've been rewatching How I Met Your Mother, and he
Okay.
is Robin's dad.
Oh, too
Uh,
funny.
yep. And so, and we had just watched an episode with him in it, like the night before I watched this. And so it was like, oh, yep, it was the eyes and the voice was
Yep.
just like, oh, it's him. And of course, I have. restarted watching season 5 of 24 because I just keep thinking of that whenever I think, what is a masterpiece
Hmm.
season of a TV show? And I'm 6 episodes in. Well, sure enough, in I think episode 12 of the season, he shows up as vice president. So I was like, that's just perfect. He's in
Yep,
the perfect
absolutely.
season of a show. And 6 episodes into that season, it absolutely holds up and is fantastic. Um,
I,
but
I think
I
it's funny
digress.
how many of these folks are, I mean, they're character actors and they
Yep.
show up in everything.
They're in 1 or 2 episodes of almost every show you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So,
The final point I think I had on this was, does Picard have a lionfish?
sure does.
I'd not noticed that before, but I saw it when I watched it, and I was like, "That seriously? How?
And a
Okay,
very tiny tank for a
yeah,
lionfish, but
yep,
that's a debate for another day. But yes, it is a lionfish.
okay,
Fun fact, lionfish is my favorite kind of tropical fish.
no,
I just find them to be very fascinating animals.
yeah, they're
They're
invasive, and they pay people to hunt them
yeah, and they're
around here.
extremely poisonous.
Yeah,
Extremely poisonous.
yeah, yeah. I believe they have a season or a time of year where they pay people around Florida to hunt
Yep.
them.
And all the way down the Caribbean. I think they're native more to Australia, New Zealand, like that part of the world.
Yeah, but they're
Uh,
invasive here and completely destructive.
yeah.
I
Yep.
don't know why, I don't know what they do, but yeah,
I think they just eat everything.
yeah.
Um, the native fish, the native whatever. But all of those spines on them, if you just brush them, they're kind of like jellyfish spines.
Mm.
And the one article that I read about it was that it's not fatal to humans, but you will for a very
It'll
long
hurt like hell.
feel like somebody is repeatedly hitting your hand with a hammer.
Ooh,
Like if you got like you brush your hand against it, basically just take a hammer and just beat your hand with it, and that's what
ooh,
it feels.
that
Sounds
that
super
sounds
unpleasant.
awful.
Yeah. Um, so anyway, I just think they're really cool fish.
Yeah.
Um, there was a little part of me that always wanted one if I ever did a saltwater aquarium.
Mm.
Um, knowing that they're extremely poisonous fish and you have to work around that. But I probably never will because number one, I'll never have a saltwater aquarium. They're too much goddamn work. And number two, even if I did, I don't think I would get that fish. But you can get them. So
Hmm. All right.
anyway, that's my little
All right.
random facts about Nate for this episode. Yes, that's a lionfish. Yes, it's my favorite fish. Not because of that show, just completely separately of that. So
Yeah.
anyway,
All right.
um,
I don't really have anything else on this one. I don't know if there's any good trivia or
only a couple of things. The trivia for this episode is fairly light.
okay.
A bunch of it is spoilers for other things, which I'm not going to read those for
Fair.
the obvious reasons.
Yep.
But one piece of trivia is the Enterprise is visiting the planet Mintaka 3. Mintaka is also the name of the westernmost star of the three stars that form Orion's belt. It
Hmm.
is a white blue supergiant star located approximately 900 light years from Earth and is over 20 times larger and 7,000 times brighter than our own sun.
Hmm.
Um, let's see here. The scene where Riker is hiding from the citizens who shot was sorry, let me start that one again. The scene where Riker is hiding from the citizens was shot in Santa Clarita, California at Vasquez Rocks, where Arena was filmed.
I was gonna say
Remember,
it looked very familiar,
they shoot a lot of things there.
but they use the same handful of exterior locations.
Yep. Because they're close
But
by,
yeah,
you bust everyone over there and
right,
away you go.
right.
The final scene takes place on Mintaka 3, making this the first episode to end on a planetary surface.
Hmm.
Let's see, and that's really about it. Everything else is meh, not interesting or spoilery. So, That's all I got.
All right. Now we can move on to the next episode. When the ship's archaeologist is killed on a mission led by Worf, the Klingon feels responsible for the son she left behind in The Bonding. This episode, hmm,
Interesting. So quite a
yes.
conversation for this.
Huh?
It's quite the way to start the conversation for this.
So I was making some notes throughout it, and I made a note. So a lot of times I jot down quotes and like plot points so I can just kind of make sense of the episode if I'm a few days removed from watching it, and just remember what I want to talk about or anything.
Yep.
So with the episode in progress, and then below that, I'll often write down just kind of some general thoughts and feelings after it that's not set to any particular plot point or quote, maybe kind of around that, but just my general thoughts, feelings. Uh, this one, I went to my general thoughts while the episode is in progress. I was about 28 minutes in, and I
Hmm.
just wrote down, I don't have a solid read on the episode yet.
Okay.
It's like, on the one hand, it's a really good exploration of death and life and all of that. On the other hand, it feels like an after school special with Star Trek characters. So I just don't know.
That's fair.
And after watching it, I still don't entirely know. It's I ended up stumbling across an article after I watched it, and it was called How Ron Moore Subtly Rebooted the Next Generation with The Bonding. And I read that, and it's got a few spoilers in the article,
Yep.
but it gives a lot to think about. And I'd recommend checking out the article. It was good. Some of the stuff I'm sure doesn't quite make sense since I haven't watched everything else, but the thesis of it was basically this episode was almost a turning point in the series, in things that were done, in the way things were written, in the way characters are handled and
Hmm.
done. So it's the it makes me think that the meta part of this episode, in the greater sense of the series, may be stronger than the episode itself was.
Sure.
And I gave the episode a 6. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I wanted to like it more than I did, but there there were strong aspects to the episode, and then there were just parts that felt weak. And I can't entirely put my finger on what it was, just a feeling. Um, and yeah, it explored good themes, had some major positives in the episode, but something in the execution might have been missing. Um, but after reading that article, I have like generally positive feelings about the episode and the show's trajectory for sure. Um, I thought they did a lot of things effectively, but still something just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
What'd you give it?
So I'm trying to figure out how to start this. I've watched, everyone's gonna hate the fact that I say this next sentence because I probably say it every single week. I've watched this episode a bajillion times. Um, I went into it ready to believe it was the mediocre episode I remembered it to be. I I'm gonna take a derail. Where to go? We've been reading at work lately Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. It's a great
Okay.
book. Read it before. Um, and So we meet every 2 weeks and we read like 20, 30 pages of it and we talk about it and do some activities around it and stuff like that. It's kind of free form. And one of the things I've said over and over again is the second time I've read this book. And it's interesting how it hits differently now compared to when I read it on my own a year ago.
Hmm.
Um, and how much of that is relational to the things that I'm experiencing in my day-to-day life, that different parts of the book resonate to me versus a year ago and what was going on then resonate.
Hmm.
Those parts resonated with me then. So I went into this really expecting it to be the kind of okay, not a bad episode. And I mean, it is probably an okay, not a bad episode. It's a little disjointed. There's a few different plot points that kind of intersect at the end of it,
Hmm.
and not very elegantly, but they intersect and kind of make sense. But I think it hit me at a point where I was like, my God, um, this is coming off of having a friend of mine who passed away earlier this year and left
Hmm.
behind a wife and two teenage kids. This is, coming off of about a month ago. I don't think I even told you this. Um, One of Ellie's best friend's older brother, who's 11, passed away from spinal cancer.
Hmm.
And so, to me, um, I think that this hit all of the emotional notes
Hmm.
that would hit with situations like that. I ended up giving it an 8. I thought it was actually a really great episode when taken in that context.
Yeah. And so I love how you put it like that. And the way you were talking made me think of something I've said a number of times because Abby and I tend to watch through the same 5 or 6 sitcoms that we've seen a dozen times, and we'll
Yep.
just rewatch those because we know they're good. We'll turn it on, we'll fall asleep and not care because we've seen them 100 times. Who cares if we sleep through an episode or four? And it's been funny over the years, and right now we're just about done watching How I Met Your Mother again. And whether it's How I Met Your Mother or Friends or pretty much any show we've watched, it's amazing how they hit you differently at different points in life.
Yep.
I mean, you see the end of Friends and they're moving out, they're moving on, they're going their separate ways. That hits you a hell of a lot differently when you're 22 or 21 and graduating college versus 26 and just living life
Yep.
versus 37 and moving across the country.
Yep.
And I mean, seeing those different things and similar stuff with story developments near the end of How I Met Your Mother, where there are big life changes happening and they hit you very differently when you're 25 or 37 with 2 kids and moving across the country. That hits very differently. And it makes me think of the quote that I think it was kind of a stoic quote. I don't remember if it's Marcus Aurelius or somebody else saying, no man can step in the same river twice because neither the river nor he are the same.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
so, like you reading this book, it's you're experiencing it differently because of a different life experience and different just approach to it than you've got. And then same with the episode. I think that's awesome. And then I juxtapose that with people I know who are just like, yeah, I never rewatch stuff. If I've seen it once, I'm good. And it's just like, man, I rewatch stuff all the time,
Yep.
and it's almost new if you're open to it.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Well, I
I
just
could,
think of like you and I watching The Diplomat a few weeks ago,
yeah,
and like I'd already seen the first 6 or 7 episodes, but
yeah,
rewatching it, I was like, holy crap. Like there is so much that I didn't catch
right,
that I'm now
right,
catching the second time through, right?
right.
Um,
And so yeah, I with this one, I'm gonna stick with a 6 for now, but it's very much a qualified 6.
yep.
Um, and
I
that
don't think a six is off base.
I
I
could
think it
act
just hit
I
me in
could
that moment.
absolutely see how this could be a 7 or an 8. And yeah, if you've got that perfect storm of shit events going on that like are very much touched on in this episode, and it's one I really struggled with because it's almost like it's a microcosm of what I felt overall with the original series.
Yep.
Like, okay, I like what they're doing. I don't love how they did all of it,
Yep.
but I've got a generally okay feeling. I like the direction they're going. I like some of the stuff they're doing, but the execution wasn't quite there. And some of that is kind of how I felt about this episode. It was like it was good, but
Mhm.
is kind of where I fell. I thought the kid was awesome. I thought he was so
Yeah,
good.
he played that so well.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, then there were just some just weird parts, and I can't even put my finger on what was weird. I mean, you've got Wesley yelling at Picard basically, and it seemed raw and real,
yeah, but I love that. That didn't
and that
feel
was really good.
that
But
felt like very much a level of emotion that had been pent up inside of him for over a decade
hmm
that finally had an outlet.
yeah,
Like that he could bring closure to that part of his life that
yeah,
he'd never been able to bring closure to, right?
yep, right,
So
yeah.
yeah, I I think it just hit just right. I also think this is the first time I've watched this episode and really paid attention to it as a parent. Like I know
Yeah,
I've watched it
that
since becoming
changes
a
shit
parent,
too.
but yeah, it's to sit down and like really, really watch it and not be like, well, it's playing in the background while I, monkey around on my iPad or whatever.
Right.
Right. Um, and to like sit and watch it. It just, yeah, I don't know. I think it was really well done. I do, you bring up the Ronald Moore thing, and that was one of the things I noticed after the fact was he wrote the episode. And I mean, you probably got this from the article that you read, but he becomes a major fixture in Star Trek.
He
And so
becomes a major fixture in
everything.
sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
his resume is as long as my arm.
yeah,
Um, and
it.
so
I would.
I understand why this could be the turning point
Yeah.
of Next Gen with his involvement,
Yep.
because everything that he does to this series moving forward is so profound. And that was one of the things I noticed when I realized he wrote the episode. I was like, is this the introduction? Is this when he starts to have an impact on the series? And if so, that's pretty incredible to like notice that kind of hard turn to it.
hmm
So,
Yeah. I'm. I'm gonna text you
yeah,
here.
send me that.
I'm gonna text you the article. It was. And yeah, I know there were spoilers in there that I saw. Nothing too overt. It's like, yeah, I know stuff happens and the show
You,
continues and expands.
the
So
show's been off the air for 35
I,
years. I
yeah,
think it's gonna be hard to avoid spoilers at this
right.
point.
So, but I thought the article was really, for lack of a better word, I'll go full Spock and say just fascinating.
Yeah,
A really and it made me like gave a lot to think about, and again, I was just torn. Um, Yeah. And I even wrote like questions as I'm thinking through this stuff. Like, is it possible to really like what an episode is doing, but not be able to articulate why you don't love how they did it?
right.
And that kind of sums up how I felt about this episode. I don't know what exactly didn't work for
Yep.
me, but I generally liked what they were doing. That's why I said it was kind of a microcosm of the original series in general. By the end of it, I think I gave the original series a 6. Um, overall. But again, it's like I like the base that they set, and if this is setting the stage for some stuff, and it continued explorations that a little peek behind the curtain here of where I'm editing episodes right now. I was just editing the original series episode or podcast where we covered the episode The Apple. And
Hmm.
that episode also kind of, at least our discussion, kind of explored the meaning of life, which which the meaning is there because our time is finite. And at least whether the episode went there or whether just our discussion did, I mean, these are universal themes that are being explored by these shows.
Yeah.
And going back to why I originally started watching this was trying to understand what is it that brings people to this. And even in an episode that I thought was just okay, there are universal themes that are worth discussing.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
awesome.
I want to read this section in 10 forward with Data and Riker too, because I think this is
Hmm.
also kind of a hidden gem in this episode of
Yep.
the exploration of things.
I I had a note about that as well.
I mean, they start the scene and Data walks in. Excuse me, sir, am I intruding? No, sit down. How well did you know Lieutenant Astor? We spent some time together, not very well. How well did you know her? Why do you ask? Well, you just asked me. But why do you ask the question? Since her death, I have been asked several times to define how well knew Lieutenant Astor, and I heard you ask Wesley on the bridge how well he knew Jeremy. Does the question of familiarity have some bearing on death? Do you remember how we all felt when Tasha died? I do not sense the same feelings of absence that I associate with Lieutenant Yar, although I cannot precisely say why. Just human nature, Data. Human nature, sir? We feel a loss more intensely when it's a friend. But should not the feelings run as deep regardless of who has died? Maybe they should, Data. Maybe if we felt the loss of any life as keenly as we felt the death of those close to us, human history would be a lot less bloody.
Hmm.
And it just that scene also made me think of the you know the, it kind of diminishes it a little bit, but the old adage of, the loss of one life is a tragedy, the loss of many is a statistic.
Yeah.
Um, but it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, they feel it so much more profoundly because it's someone they knew versus if they had gotten word that something had happened on a planet far away and a million people died. Like that would be super sad, but it wouldn't have the same effect as someone they knew. It's
Yeah.
that weird human dichotomy, right?
Well, it kind of comes back to I had to look it up because I was blanking on the actual name of it, but they call it, I think, Dunbar's number.
Okay.
Um, Kind of a limit to how many people you can maintain a relationship with,
Yep.
um, in some capacity. And I think that number is generally around like 150, give or take a couple.
Yeah. I just
And
looked it
it's
up.
just we live on a planet with almost 8 billion people. It's just like
Yeah.
we don't have the capacity to feel for all of them the way we do for friends or family. And
Right.
that's just
Hmm.
part of how a society can survive, I think. If we, I mean, there are two ways you could look at it. If we felt every loss as intensely as we do those close to us, well, we might try a hell of a lot harder to avoid any loss, or we would just be crippled completely,
Yeah.
and society would end. So it's again that just dichotomy. All right, fuck it. I'm gonna give this episode a 7 just because there's so much good stuff to talk about. That the meta part of this episode and all of that is just, yeah,
I'd like to say for the record, I
it's
was
good.
not trying to convince you to raise your
Oh, I
score.
know.
I
Oh,
respected the sense.
I had notes in here. I've got more to think about this one. I could see it bumping up to a 7 maybe, but I'm not sure. Sticking with 6 for now. Could easily be convinced though. And then maybe my score will change tomorrow, but I keep coming back to the feeling that explored some good themes, had some positives and stuff I've said. So I talked myself into it just because there was so much good in it that even the I think glaring weaknesses are okay. And it still had a bit of that after school special feel, but
For sure.
where those weren't very effective, this one maybe was because we've had plenty to talk about.
You mean it wasn't the Wes and Tasha drugs are bad in K speech that happened in season one?
Yeah, I like that. Drugs are bad, MK.
I
Oh
haven't
God,
watched
that
a
was
lot of South
so
Park in my
bad.
life, but I do know that line.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yep. Um, so unrelated to any of that, I I did notice it seemed like they reused a couple of things from possibly the episode The Survivors when they were scanning the planet and it was barren and nothing was there. I was just like, I feel like I just saw
yep.
this. I don't know if it was from that, but I made the note that that's
I
what it
made the
looked
same
like.
note, by the way. I literally
It
am
it looked
reminiscent of the
identical, and
survivors.
it just didn't have the square acre.
Well,
Uh,
and you've got the random aliens that can create anything, and
yep,
the only difference being that Jeremy was still alive
yep.
versus she was a construct, right?
Um, Yeah. And the one of the last things, because I think the details of the episode are what I didn't care for. The themes, the discussions, that I thought was all great when I watched it. The details, take them or leave them.
Yep.
But uh what was I gonna say? Oh, one of the first notes I made was I noticed their name, the name was the Koinonians. And I wonder if there's trivia on that because I remember going back to church growing up. My parents were part of a small group called Koinonia, and it was a basically a fellowship group. And you look up the definition, it's a Greek word, kind of meaning Christian fellowship or communion with God, or more commonly with fellow Christians. So I
Okay.
wonder if obviously not taking a religious approach to this, but I wonder if if that name is deliberate and tied to this notion of Worf really trying to bond with the kid and doing that and kind of going through that ceremony to have that and having that kinship through saying, I was an orphan. I understand what he's going through and want to be there to support him. And also feeling guilty that Worf survived because of where he was standing.
Yep.
And that survivor's guilt almost.
There is no trivia on that, but that doesn't
Okay.
mean that wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
There's also just not a lot of trivia for this
Yeah.
episode.
And
Um,
I can see that.
the other thing that I mean, I liked, like, I appreciated the sentiment of the aliens were just like, we killed his mom, we want to take care of him. Like,
Yeah.
misguided as it was, they, you know, their intention was to do the right thing.
Yep.
So I'll give them that, like, all day long. Maybe they were a little too insistent when everyone was like, no, he'd really like him to stay here. Um,
Yep.
but I so often it's these, you get these obscure alien races and they just don't care. Like, yeah, well, that sucks. And so it's more of like a retribution storyline,
Yeah.
than it is trying to make amends, you know.
Hmm.
And so I appreciated that part of it as well.
Yeah.
Um, but
So I liked again going back to that, like exploring some of these themes of the meaning of life and things like that. Um, when Marla says it's our duty to make him happy again. And I really like Picard's next line. He said, "Do you honestly believe he would be happy in this total fiction which you wish to create? What reason would he have to live? What you're offering him is a memory, something to cherish, not to live in. It's part of our life cycle that we accept the death of those we love. Jeremy must come to terms with his grief. He must not cover it or hide away from it. You see, we are mortal. Our time in this universe is finite. That is one of the truths that all human must learn, or all humans must learn." That's a profound statement that really captures it. I mean, just, yeah, was really, really good.
Yep. I mean, he says later, or I think it's the I wrote down part of it. I want to get. Oh no, it's earlier. So Marla says to him, "Your philosophy is curious, Captain. What is so noble about sorrow? I can provide him an existence where he will feel no pain, no anguish." And
Hmm.
Picard says, "It is at the heart of our nature to feel pain and joy. It is an essential part of what makes us what we are."
Hmm. Yeah. That whole scene was just a really, really good scene. Really
Yeah.
good discussion of life and meaning and death. And yeah, this episode explored a lot of that really well.
Yep. I agree. No, it's just a good episode. Like I did not remember it being this good. And I
Yeah.
really like I took slightly more notes on this than I did on Who Watches the Watchers, but
Hmm.
still not a ton of notes because I was just sitting there watching.
Hmm.
Wrote down the occasional quote, asked some random questions that are not all that
Yeah.
interesting on self-reflection. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. I don't have much more on this one. I'm
I
ready to
don't
move on to the
either.
next one if you are.
There's a few little bits of trivia here. Again, not a ton of trivia for this. So I'm not going to continue to say Ronald D. Moore for all of these. There's a Ronald B. Moore that was
Mm.
also affiliated with Star Trek, and so they plus all the Union stuff they
Hmm.
do that. But Ronald Moore, the one that we will talk about more often than the other one, his original idea was for Jeremy Astor to recreate his mother on the holodeck. However, Gene Roddenberry nixed the idea, believing in the 24th century children would have a greater acceptance of death. Yeah, maybe. Let's see here. Patches is a calico cat.
Hmm.
Jeremy refers to the cat as he. However, most
Calicos
calico,
are female.
you know,
Like 90% of them are.
yeah, this is because coat color is partly determined by a gene on the X chromosome. Male calicos may have Klinefelter syndrome, 2X and 1Y,
Hmm.
in some cases, or all of their cells, uh, 2X and 1Y chromosome, or in some or all of their cells instead of XY. Some male calicos have no chromosome abnormalities. Of course, being the future, it could also be genetic engineering. Um,
Hmm.
and I watched a thing on Instagram like a month ago. I should find it and send it to you that all cats have three colors. At the end of the day, there are only three coat colors for cats.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just like weird genetic combinations of how they layer that produce different colors in cats, which I thought was kind of
Hmm.
interesting. Anyway, if we're gonna go way back in time here, last piece of trivia on this. In an AOL chat, yes, that would be America
Hmm.
Online for our younger viewers, listeners, whatever they are. In an AOL chat in 1998, Ronald Moore admitted that he was not a big fan of Gabriel Damon's performance as Jeremy Astor,
Hmm.
adding that it would have been interesting to continue the relationship on the Enterprise with a different kid.
Hmm.
So we liked Jeremy's performance and thought he did a really good job. Ronald Moore did not, and would have loved to continue the character just with a different actor.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yep. That's the only other piece of trivia that's at all interesting. So,
All right. Well, we can move on to the final episode for this week, in which the Enterprise is caught in a booby trap that captures the ship and converts its energy into lethal levels of radiation in Booby Trap. What'd you
yeah.
think of this episode?
You want me to start this episode?
Yep.
Um, you know, especially coming off of the previous episode, this one did not hit me as strongly as the other two did, frankly. That was an interesting episode. It was all right. I gave it a 6. The
Okay.
story was interesting enough, but didn't do a whole lot to kind of capture me. I think there was definitely that threat, but it also was just like, eh. And also, goddamn Jordy, you can be a creepy dude sometimes, and not a big fan of that. That whole
Yeah.
part of the storyline, I could have done without. Or it could
Yeah.
have been done completely differently in a way that was less creepy, but it was pretty creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just weird with Jordy. Like,
Very weird, Jordy.
I mean, I mean, a bit sad because you see him like trying and trying so hard and striking
But
out.
but he's in the controversial term, and but he's a bit of an incel in this episode,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he kind of has a bit of that attitude of like, I'm the nice guy, I'm entitled to something, and he's not getting it. And so therefore he gets a little weird about it.
Hmm.
So even the opening of him on the holodeck with the other crew member was kind of weird and awkward. Also, how hard would it be to date on a starship? That was one of my first comments on this episode. It was like, even with 1,000 people, um, that's like trying to date in a small town, right? Like the
Or
pool is not
in a small high school where your class has 35 people in it.
yeah, shut my mouth now. Um, so you beat the odds. Fine.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, we are the exception, not the rule.
For sure. But it's just a hard thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Like you just don't, that's not a thing that you don't have a lot to pick from. So that's tough. But the rest of it was just, there were some parts that were okay. There were a lot of parts that were not okay that I'm sure Abby would have lots to talk about. Um, and so I'm sticking by my 6. I could probably even rate it lower, but at least there was some kind of imminent threat that required
It-
a challenge to get out of. So
yeah. You may have talked me down. Um, one, so my thoughts again, my first general thought I wrote was I'm not sure about this episode. I feel like I write that a lot. Um, but generally like these. Uh, I said like so many episodes, they had to solve a problem, deal with new complications. All of that I thought was pretty well executed. Uh, a a decently strong Geordie episode in the problem solving department.
yeah,
In the character development, he just can't figure his shit out. And that, like you said, was just kind of weird. Um, I initially said 7 because my gut feeling wasn't this was a good episode. It was a fine episode. And where I've used fine, I've said fine is maybe like that 6.6 range,
yeah,
where it's not quite a 7, but it's better than okay. So I've been falling to good. Um, so, so I said lately I've been using that synonymously with good. So I guess I'll give this one a 7. I could be talked down to a 6. I don't think I could be talked up to an 8. I think you talked me down to a six. I'm gonna go six.
Okay. Fair enough.
Um, because yeah, there was just some stuff that just didn't quite work. I don't feel like I missed a ton in this episode, but I felt like something's missing.
Yeah.
Um, and and then I looked back, I listened or I backed it up a couple times to see some things, and then Abby was watching it, and I walked into her office, and I heard a couple things, and I was like, okay, I was struggling with the kind of where did I wrote it down somewhere. Um, yeah, I felt like I missed kind of what set the booby trap and why.
Yeah.
Um, and then was the old ship the trap, or was it something that was caught in the proverbial spider's web? I don't know if that was clear. And then when I walked into Abby's office, they were talking about the assimilators and all of that. So I guess the what is those assimilators, they're capturing the power, stealing the power and the energy, transferring it to radiation to kill the ship. So that kind of explains the why in a sense, but maybe the outstanding question is who or whom? Like
Yep.
who set this trap up and then why in a more cosmic sense of why are they stealing the power and the energy to then kill them with radiation? Like the threat was, I think, somewhat defined, but not very well developed because it was still just like, okay, why this? Why here? Why? And
Yep.
to what end? I mean, just to kill shit? I mean, is something feeding off of this? Is it eh, so that's where I was struggling with it, and then I was like, okay, but yeah, they did everything else. It was well executed, and the problem solving, figure it out, and then seeing Picard sit down at the controls and like run the ship. That was kind of cool and good tension throughout it. I mean, they had their fast approaching deadline, and then things got worse when they tried to shoot it, and they gave it more power, which made more radiation and all
Yep.
of that. But yeah,
So
I don't know.
I think they do a terrible job of explaining it.
Good. I'm
Mostly
glad I
because
didn't
I
just
think it's a
miss it.
couple of lines early in the episode where basically, and I had to look up the names because I couldn't even remember the name of the other species, but it says early on, Captain's log, stardate 43205.6. We've arrived at Aurelius 9 to chart the battle in which the Menthars and the Promelians fought to their mutual extinction. Among the ruins, we have found a relic, a Promelian battle cruiser that has withstood the centuries. So I think they don't do a great job of explaining it, but I think the Promelian battle cruiser got stuck in the web created by the Menthars and the crew perished. But by that point, there's nobody left. Like that was towards the very end of whatever this
Hmm.
war is that was fought that wiped out both civilizations. And so nobody ever came back to disarm the booby trap. And it
Hmm.
somehow survived for all of these years, only for the Enterprise to get caught in it. And it was the ship itself wasn't the cause. It was the invisible whatever in the asteroids around it that was the cause. But they don't do a great job of explaining that. And I think the only reason why I can explain that is having seen the episode a bajillion goddamn times. Um, it never really like I know I've watched this episode many, many times, but I never really remember a ton of details about it other than creepy Geordie. Like, oh yeah, this is the one where he brings in Leah and, downloads her personality from Starfleet Records and makes her a little hologram character that he gets to flirt with, um, for an entire episode. And like, oh yeah, that one. Got it. Cool. Then that's basically where my analysis of the episode stops.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, even like, oh God, the end of it. Uh, I'm with you every day, Jordy. Every time you look at this engine, you're looking at me. Every time you touch it, it's me. Just like, what a dumb goddamn line. What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was rough. Um
The
I
second to last line of the episode. What the hell?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. It yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that
I
I have a whole lot else to talk about with this episode because it was just those parts of it are just so fucking dumb. Um,
yeah.
that could have
Uh
been done completely differently in a way that would have been really cool. They chose not to do that.
yep. Yeah. Uh
I love the concept of Geordi having a conversation with a holographic representation of the person who designed the engines of the Enterprise. I think that is a cool story point. Um,
mhm.
and then where they took it, just the freaking rubbing his shoulders and just I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, that was weird. Um I focused less on that stuff, and maybe that's why I gave it initially a seven, just because I
I
quickly went from like that's weird to just whatever. Maybe I got distracted and started looking at my phone because I don't even know. But I did like though it did go back to that constant dichotomy that they have, or the constant discussion over humans versus technology. And
Mhm.
they had a few good moments in there, and interesting things I thought. Um, some good lines when they were talking about how we've run all of these simulations, and Geordi says um, is saying that if we shut everything off and then we control it and go through and not have the computer run it, because Jordy went from like let's just shut everything down, give control to the computer, see what
Yeah,
happens, and
yeah.
then their simulations got smashed. So um, then he went the complete opposite direction, saying, okay, we're going to hit the impulse power really quick to get us moving, and then we'll just use some thrusters and we will navigate through this.
Hmm.
Um, it felt a little like Apollo 13 when they're trying to whip together the the filter to get the CO2 out of the air so they can
Yep.
still, breathe. And then of course right after that they then use the asteroid as a slingshot, further uh being like Apollo 13 using the moon as a slingshot to get back home. But I liked when he said the numbers say it's even money. It's no better than turning it over to the computer, but no worse either. But I say forget the numbers. There's no way the computer can compensate for the human factor, the intuition, the experience, and then Picard and the wish to stay alive. Make it so.
And and I can like I think that's a great scene and I can buy into
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Um
I
because
just thought that was an interesting discussion. And they just went back to like, hey, computers aren't going to have intuition and
yeah.
experience and any of that. And it wasn't even this time in a conversation of should data do this, but literally just like, hey, the computer can't do it. We've seen that in our simulations, so let's take our shot. Um, And then yeah, seeing Picard sit down at Wesley's station was kind of cool.
It's pretty cool. And I I'm gonna make a comment that I don't want to construe as shitting on it. Because I think it's an interesting decision. Obviously, I think Wesley doing that as someone who hasn't even gone through the academy, probably not the best decision in that scenario. So totally get
Hmm.
like maybe we remove him from that scene. And I certainly understand Data not doing it for the same reason we talked about the computer not doing it. It's an interesting decision to have Picard do that because presumably he
When did
hasn't sat
Picard
down.
last control a starship
Exactly.
like
And
that?
so I think it's a cool character moment, but at the same time, it's like, hey, wasn't Worf literally sitting at that station like 2 years ago?
Right,
I don't know. I'm just gonna throw
right.
that out there.
Yeah.
Um,
It was cool, but then when you deconstruct it a little bit, you're just like, dude, why?
yeah,
You have moved beyond this and you've got
right.
this kid there because he's like a whiz kid
Yep.
at this. Why
But
would you want to do this instead of him?
but if you're in
But at the
a
same time,
literal life and death
yep,
scenario,
it's saying we are probably going to die and we're going to die at my hands and my doing,
and
not me delegating.
And I love the sentiment and I get it. And like I said,
Yep.
I don't want it to come across as like shitting on the decision because I think it's a really cool moment for the show. But
Yep.
I also think in a real world scenario, the commanding officer of a ship is going to be like, who's the best person to put in that chair? Of the human factor, who's going to give us the best chance
Right.
to survive this? And it's probably not me as the commanding officer.
Right.
But again, I still like I can't complain too much because it's
No.
super cool.
It's a cool moment.
Yeah.
Um, and then before the really lame lines, I did like Geordie's little comment in that final scene about just the discussion of technology. He
Hmm.
says, you know, I've always thought that technology could solve almost any problem. It enhances the quality of our lives, lets us travel across the galaxy, even gave me my vision. But sometimes you have to turn it all off, even the gypsy violins. It's like, I think that's another really cool sentiment. And again, it's so odd to hear a sentiment like that in such a technology forward series. But again, it's not about the technology. That's just a tool they use to tell the stories and explore these human themes and these universal themes. But yeah, I thought that was a really just cool sentiment
Yep.
there. Um, yeah, I don't have a whole lot else on this one. Um, I liked the little discussion early on where Picard is just like it's like ships and bottles, and everyone's looking at him like, the fuck are you talking about? He's just like, none of you built ships in bottles? Just like,
No.
no, it's 2400. What the hell, Grandpa? Uh, and
Uh, well,
but
uh,
then but then O'Brien's just like ships and bottles? Great fun.
but it's even funnier that because the dialogue is it's exactly as they left it, number one, in the bottle, the ship in the bottle. Good Lord, didn't anybody here build ships and bottles when they were boys? Worf, I did not play with toys. Data, I was never a boy.
Yeah.
O'Brien, I did, sir. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Proceed. And then they're all looking at him. It did. I really did. Ships and bottles. Great fun.
Great fun.
I love O'Brien so much as a character. Just, God, he's so incredible. And he
And
has 10 seconds worth of scenes in any given episode if he's in it.
yeah,
Like, he's just a some random reoccurring guest character, and it's
yeah,
phenomenal.
yep. And then uh, I guess in that next scene, we've got just a perfect wharf line
Yeah.
when they get onto the bridge of the other ship. He's like, admirable. They died at their posts. Just
Just,
just peak wharf right there.
yep.
Yeah.
So few words,
Uh,
but so much meaning.
I
Like,
know.
It's just
Yep. And I did like even though he was being all woe is me, being a little weenie when Jordy goes to 10 forward and he's talking to Guinan. He's like, "Do you have anything don't you have anything stronger than this?" Yeah. Would it help? No. And
oh,
just again, just so matter of fact. I thought it was
it's
it
just
was it was
well,
good.
and you keep going. Tell me something, Guinan. You're a woman, right? Yes, I can tell you I'm a woman. Like,
So,
um,
um yeah. Again, recognizing people in this in a Star Trek episode and having to look up where they were from because I can recognize them but can't put my finger on it. Did you recognize Christy from the beginning scene?
yeah, where's she from though?
She is I think the name was Michelle, the girlfriend in Tommy Boy.
Yes, that's who it is.
Yep.
God, I love that movie so
Like,
much.
oh, there it is.
Yep. God, I haven't watched that movie in a long time, and now I
God,
want to.
me either. I don't know if I've watched it since college.
Oh, one of the greatest comedies of all time.
Yeah.
And Chris Farley, freaking brilliant.
Yep.
What it's folks like him and John Belushi, and it's like y'all died too young. John
Hmm.
Candy, like all of you were just brilliant, and you all died too young.
Yep.
Sad.
Yep.
So I always tell people, I don't know if I've ever told you this bit of trivia before, but everyone knows the Chris Farley living in a van down by the river, right? That whole
Hmm.
SNL sketch. So that character is based off of his high school football coach.
Hmm.
That high school football coach later went on and had a pretty varied career in athletics afterwards, where he eventually ended up as the athletic director at the University of Minnesota. It
Hmm.
was Joel Maturi. If you remember
Hmm.
him from back in the day,
Yeah.
he was the athletic director when we were in college.
Hmm.
I realize he's
Interesting.
them, but like at the time he would, and so that whole living in a van down by the river is Joel Maturi.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
because Chris Farley's from Wisconsin originally.
Yep. Yep.
So,
And then crazy to think he was you know how old he was when he died?
oh, he was like early 30s,
He
right?
was 33.
Yeah.
You know how
Crazy.
old John Candy was when he died?
Like early 40s.
Yeah, he was only 43.
Yeah. The dude has a heart attack and tips over. Like, how is that?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't small.
And even well, yeah, I mean I get it. But even like I realize he's not dead, but we watched Ellie watched part of it. I watched the whole thing, but Ghostbusters, the
Hmm.
original, right?
I think I've
Rick
only seen that
Moranis.
once.
Rick Moranis is so goddamn funny. And
Hmm.
I mean that's another career that again, he's still alive,
Yep.
but for reasons, he stopped acting and
I I
he
want to
could
say I think it's like his wife died
yeah, his wife died of cancer, so he quit acting to take
and
care of
he
the kid.
just quit acting. He did something like he was gonna do something in like the early 2020s
Yeah.
and that got like canceled, but
They were
yeah.
gonna do another Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie. And
Yep.
he was gonna come out of retirement for that. And then COVID hit and they canceled the whole
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
There was rumors
Crazy.
he was gonna come back for one of the newer Ghostbusters ones.
Mm.
I don't think that just didn't materialize.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm.
but Rick Moranis in the 80s, freaking hysterical in
Mm-hmm.
everything he did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could have seen more of what his career had been like. Maybe
Yeah.
someday we will. Like there's still
Yeah.
time. but the rest of them, Belushi, Farley, Candy,
Yep.
miss.
Crazy.
Um, this is another one where there's just not a lot of trivia for it, interestingly enough. Um, So this episode marks the first appearance of the final version of the Starfleet uniforms used in the series. So obviously
Hmm.
we noticed that they changed in season three and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of evolved a little bit. So the seams running down the sides of the chest were removed and the shoulder pads were made smaller and an elastic waistband was added to the bottom of the uniform top.
Hmm.
Captain Picard is the only one wearing the updated uniform in this episode.
Hmm.
Um, In the opening scene, where Geordi LaForge enjoys a holodeck date with Christie, the violinist plays the piece Hungarian Dance Number 5 by Johannes Brahms. This no doubt was the inspiration for the name of the character Dr. Leah Brahms. The same composer has been used as a MacGuffin in a number of other Star Trek productions.
Hmm.
Let's see.
So, a question I had, and yeah, I'm sure you know the answer to this off the top of your head. If Geordi was in holodeck 3, how many holodecks are there?
I don't know that I know that off the top of my head. There's, I think, at least six.
Wow.
I'd have to look. Stand by. I do have the next generation, well, there, technical manual.
Yep.
In worst case, this would take a lot longer, and we would probably do this for the next episode. I can refer to the blueprints because I have those as, but
Mm-hmm.
let's look it up. Index in Hebrew acronyms. H holodecks, page 156. I think this is a first edition too. They might not
Nice.
have done more than one edition, but um, it does not immediately say. There are four main holodecks on deck 11.
Hmm.
In addition, a set of 20 smaller personal holographic simulator rooms are situated on decks 12 and 33. Four big ones, 20 smaller ones.
Okay.
I didn't know about the smaller ones. I
I
learned
didn't
some.
know there were smaller ones.
Yeah.
So those
So
more like Ready Player One setups,
I would
or
imagine something that
yeah,
just like a booth that you walk into.
yeah.
It refers to deck numbers. Maybe later I'll dig out the blueprints. And yes, I am that big of a nerd. But they were actually, I used to own them, and some for some reason I got rid of them.
Hmm.
They were fairly cheap to rebuy on eBay.
Yeah.
And yes, this is a first edition.
Nice. So I don't have much more on this one.
Yeah, I mean the trivia, I think I got through all the trivia that was worth talking about.
All right.
Yeah, it's the rest of it's
Well, there you go. I know there are some people who almost never rewatch a show or a movie. They never reread a book. They always want to experience something new. I am 100% not that person. I love rewatching things I've seen before. I mean, at this point, I know it's good. Now, I also enjoy watching new things, like Star Trek, so I'm definitely not opposed in principle. I do just see value in experiencing good content, whether I've seen it before or not. But I think those folks who don't like rewatching things, they're missing out, because it almost always hits a bit differently than the first, or second, or third time through. Watching something in college hits differently after you've had kids, and differently than if you are planning or have recently picked up your family and moved across the country. Watching the finale of Friends in a college dorm room, you see where life might take you. Seeing it when you are in the process of uprooting everything and moving feels real in a different way. And personally, I love that. That's why I constantly talk about the sitcoms and shows I've watched over and over again. There's always something new to pick up from them. They can also just be easy, safe, comfort food shows. I know Star Trek is that for many people out there. One day, I see it being that way for me too. I've gone back and rewatched some episodes at this point, but I'm trying to largely keep things fresh for the podcast, so I don't watch a ton that we're not actively discussing. But I fully plan on rewatching all of these series at some point. Maybe not the animated series. There's this old philosophical quote that goes something like, "No man steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and he is not the same man." Sure, the stories don't inherently change, but the idea remains. And I think that's a good place to call it for this week. If you're watching along with us, next time we will discuss the enemy, the price, and the vengeance factor. As always, I want to thank you for spending your time listening to our conversations about Star Trek. If you enjoy what we're doing, please do us a favor and share with a friend. Also, leave us a rating and a review on your favorite podcast app. You can find us on X at Baldly Go Podcast, to Baldly Go Podcast on Facebook, and to baldlygopodcast.com. You can also find me at aaronemery.net. Nate and I have another podcast, The InLap, in which we discuss the current Formula One season. Listen to The InLap in your favorite podcast app. For Nate, this is Aaron reminding you to never give up, never surrender. God, nothing is happening. This episode is stupid.